Hello and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker for this session. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. At any time during the event, you can visit those virtual booths from the main agenda page. To ask questions throughout all of the sessions, simply type into Q&A chat and we'll address your question at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Mercedes Sullivan, VP and HR Storefront Architect at TIAA. We are so excited to have Mercedes with us for a keynote presentation titled Human First HR Innovations, Strategies for a Complex Workplace Environment. Welcome, Mercedes, and over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. All right. So my name is Mercedes Sullivan. I am the head of the HR storefront, or the people team, as we call it at TIA Pref here. Essentially, what that means is that I am in charge of ensuring that all the products and services and the offer for HR is consumed properly, and our employees have a good experience in knowing where and how to get that information. But previously to this role, I spent 8 years at the PMO, where I ran our agile transformation and productization of HR, which is most of what I want to talk to you about today. I'm hoping it's an informal conversation and we'll have some questions and answers at the end. And through this presentation today, I hope to show you the things that we learned, where we won and where we absolutely didn't. And so hopefully that helps you along your own journey. So there's 3 things that we're going to touch on today. We're going to review what are we solving for, what was our transformation journey like, and I'm going to try to get as tactical as I can, and some of our lessons learned. So why are we here? As head of the PMO, I spent a lot of time figuring out how do we better organize to deliver the right value to the right people at the right time when everything is in constant change and there's so many stakeholders to keep track of, and it's so complex and that's never ending. So we took a step back for a minute and figure out how can we do this? So what was our business problem? So as the head of the PMO, I was spending a lot of my time prioritizing projects. I served or enabled everybody that reported to the head of HR, so the COEs and the CHROs, for each of the lines of businesses. And every year was the same. Let's prioritize this big exercise that took forever, which we ended up in a list of a lot of projects that were difficult to prioritize. We couldn't test them iteratively, so we didn't know if they were well received or not till the end. We didn't really implement a lot of design thinking, meaning we thought that this is what our employees wanted and we delivered rather than asking them to help us design with them. And it was just slow. It took us a while to deliver the projects because they were so big and we relied on people from the different areas to help us come be part of that project. So with that, we saw an opportunity to think differently about how we organize or how we think so that we can do that more seamlessly and continuously. And especially so we were able to cut our losses and take other priorities that would come in so that we can focus quickly. A great example, you'll know of how it is COVID. If we have already prioritized list of things and that thing comes in, how do we stop and prioritize quickly without missing a bit and knowing what to do next? So after a lot of research and analysis and talking to a bunch of people, I came to the conclusion that there are two main things that we could try to help us in this journey. So one is a mindset shift, and the second is more practices of how to deliver. First, it was the mentality or the mind shift of going from projects to products, and we'll touch on that in a minute. And then the introduction of agile concepts in HR and how they apply to us. Now, let me caveat this by saying that if you're an agile purist, please don't hate me. I do not subscribe to following a methodology or a process to the T. So it was really more about taking that mindset and what other areas of the company or outside the company we're doing and figuring out what we may learn from that and adapt to ourselves. So let's start with the mind shift from projects to products. What do I mean by that? A project is something really temporary that is defined by a beginning and an end. So, for example, we had a change in policy. and the salary ranges that just came to me. So we're like, okay, this is a project that we have to put in and out. It starts this date, and then when we deploy, that's it, we're good. Let's get a group of people to deploy that work, put it together. When it's live, and we'll go back to our desk jobs. Whereas a product is more of the mindset of end to end. We do the market research and identify what our associates in this case need, and we bring a solution to life that fits that. And then the product owner or the team that owns this product will be with that product end to end, the whole management and maintenance of it, until we no longer needed that and decommission. So it sounds really simple, but it's a hard mindset for HR to switch. But this is where we started. Now, when it came to agile concepts, we focused on these 6. First, identifying product owners, who's going to own the products that we have them, and then what are the team members that are going to be supporting that ongoingly. Second, identify the voice of the customer and data that we're going to use so that we can make prioritization decisions based on that data versus what we thought was right. Third, we wanted to switch from that big project to just incremental delivery and continuously deploying a little bit of value and testing to see if it was resonating with our employees, and if not, either cut our losses or keep working forward. Then we introduced design, plan, and connect meetings. You would have heard in agile terms more like scrum meetings or PA plannings or so on and so forth, but we just kept it to design, where we come together and figure out what we're delivering or what we're creating. Planning, to make sure that we're all on the same page what we're doing in the quarter, and connecting just weekly, just ensuring that we're on track to deliver that. We also really focused on something that was really hard for us at the beginning, putting everything in Jira or any tracking tool that you have. The main goal here was to have a visible place where everybody knew what everybody else was working on, and we keep accountability and visibility of what was going on, what was late, and what was dependent on one and the other. And then finally, we really got better at retrospecting. After each of our planning sessions, we would take the lessons learned and immediately put them on the next planning session. We'll test and iterate what was going on in that particular event. And that here looks really simple, but it was really hard to implement. But at the same time, very quickly, our team members got the hang of it and really were willing to change because they were part of that process in which they were bringing that lesson learned and implementing it themselves. So how did we get started in a more tactical term, and what is a product? So for us, this we had a lot of debate if it's a product and a service or what have you. Just know that when I say product, it's because I'm borrowing from a product owner, but it could be a product or a service or what have you. And we determined that for us, we're going to have plan, attract, hire, onboard, develop, so on and so forth. So the ones that you see in blue here are the ones that we were co-planning in an agile way of working together, versus the ones in gray here. Some of them were more traditional project management that still needed to get done. And so we were able to kind of marry both of them and then just adapt our governance to what was needed. So at first, one of the things that I wanted to do is, okay, let's have all of these fleshed out. Very ironically, very anti-agile. I wanted to have everything fleshed out and then ensure that we had a product owner for everything. And that obviously didn't work very well for us. So instead, what I would recommend is that you pick one proof of concept, which is what we ended up doing. So within the develop product, we had a project or a strategic initiative called Skills of the Future, in which we were asked to ensure that we moved our company to a skills-based organization. So armed with that information, I talked to the product owner and say, hey, are you willing to learn how to do this differently? And this sounds like a really big problem that you're trying to solve or value that you need to add. Why don't we get a coach and do it this way and see what happens? She was really willing to do that, and this was our starting point. So if you are to do this journey, I highly recommend you start with one and use it as your blueprint. Learn, because everything in life that we do is a hypothesis. I thought this was going to work, but I wasn't sure. So this gave us the opportunity to do this without completely having to commit if we've done a big bang. So after we identified the product owner and the team members that were going to support her, we upskilled them, and then I hired an internal coach within my company to help us with this mindset. One of the things that we did have to work with a coach was around, hey, we want to do this agile, but not exactly. So help us, and we'll help you with our context so that we know what may work. So if you do hire a coach or somebody else, don't be shy of ensuring that you say, hey, I know this may work and this is the right way to do it, but for context, let's try this and meet people where they are. We then had our first design session in which we sat the group together and high level figure out what is it that we're trying to achieve, what are our outcomes, so we can start documenting some workflows and personas. This didn't have to be perfect or complete, but just enough to get us started for the next quarter or the next 2 quarters. From there, we set our first quarterly planning session. What happens in here is that the different groups come together. So in our case, we ensure that we have the product owner, which is on the HR side. We have legal, risk, compliance, technology, and other partners. So essentially everybody that needs to be involved in ensuring that we make a decision to go forward. And we determined as a starting point, what in a quarter can be done based on our longer term goals. And we broke down into little chunks so that we can start with our roadmap and backlog. And as I said earlier, we put this into Jira, not just for transparency, but this tracking tool also helped us understand and start measuring how many of these chunks of work and hours of work can we do in a quarter? Because as time went on, we can figure it out and actually start tracking how much capacity we truly had as a team. And we can better plan as we got better and better with more data. From there, we had our weekly check-ins just to ensure that the work that we said that we were going to do was getting done. And at first, it was quite interesting where the mind shift comes in. In these planning sessions, you agree that this is what we're going to do. If you commit to 10 pieces of work that you're going to do or components, that's what you do. But we started to see how people were doing work that was outside of what was promised. And that was delaying us from doing the work here. And they got overwhelmed. So we very quickly were able to show them, now that we have everything in Jira, how for the next planning session, they did like 3 or 4 things, but then they started doing stuff that was on the backlog for another planning session that they shouldn't have been doing. And interestingly, just showing the data and showing them how our habits were working really, really helped us get back on track on focusing on what we said we're going to commit to do and go that forward. And this all was shown at the retrospective. As I said, at the end and the beginning of each of the planning sessions, we started with what worked and what didn't, and we immediately try to incorporate it for the next quarterly planning session. And then at the wider piece of the puzzle here is that once you have your one product that's working, you can replicate that as a blueprint for another product. And the goal at the end was that all of our team members are planning together, which is what we're now doing. At the quarterly meeting, all of our product owners now come in. Each of the product owners do a readout. This is what I'm hoping to do in the next quarter. We have a slide conversation, and then everybody goes into their planning rooms. They finish out, here's the components of the work that we're going to do, and then we come back together to see if there's dependencies that we have to kind of adapt and adjust. So now let me give you a little bit of tactical three slides that I want to show you of things that resonated, because one of the things that was really hard, and I tried for 5 or 6 years to push this concept here within HR and resonating. I think a lot of the things that didn't work is that I was trying to use these big concepts and all at once and explaining them with words. But this image right here is actually what started the conversation, and people understood a little bit better of what we're trying to do. A lot of the projects that we were doing were giant, and we were just hoping that at the end he was going to have the best result. And a lot of the feedback that we were getting from our employees was, hey, you're building me a bus and I just need a bike, but with different components and so on and so forth. So we got a little better at listening to our employees of what they really wanted, not what we thought they wanted, and eventually start planning with them incrementally and knowing where to cut our losses. So instead of committing to the end to a project, here's a project that we did and this is what we're going to do, we committed to the outcome, and then we were able to more flexibly, incrementally be delivering value based on the feedback. So that was really helpful. The second piece is from projects to products. And this sounds simple, but the more practical example I can give you on one that always makes me laugh is the offer letter. I don't know how many of you have dealt with the offer letter, but as a PMO, I tell you, every year, inevitably, someone would say, we need to enhance the offer letter. I'm like, great. Who's a project owner and who owns it? and legal pointed at TA pointed at comp. At the end, no one owned it. And honestly, I understand it's a little complex when you look at things as components. And the other thing is, like, admit it. If somebody gave you something that you own, but really doesn't depend on you and your team, you don't kind of want to own it, because then you're responsible for ensuring that other people outside your team are doing this work. And it's just a lot on top of your day job. So what really helped and resonated with our team here is that we said, listen, instead of thinking of an offer letter as a project or a thing, we're going to look at hire as the product. So then anything that needs to be done to enable the hiring process falls within this portfolio. So we committed as a PMO to say, listen, product owner, who happens to be in TA, you own hire, but our commitment to you is that for everything that needs to fall within it, including the offer letter, all of the right people that need to be there to help you decide and determine and do the work for those components are going to be at our planning sessions quarterly, and we're going to continue to be on them to ensure that those things get done. So we really had it was like an aha moment that for them. They're like, okay, let me try this out. So they were at least able to try it out, and it really worked very well. I'm telling you that I tried this offer letter project like 4 or 5 times, and it took forever. I feel like we didn't get anywhere. We would fix a little bit and break something else. Whereas when we started planning like this collectively and cohesively, and we really made it a priority, and especially because we were planning it at the same time that we were planning everything else, we made the commitment to say that if this is really a priority, we will make it a priority. So we're gonna put something else in the backlog, so together we can work on this and do it ongoingly. And so this is an example of how we started to change our mindset and how that became a lot better for us. And then here's just another example of how we've saved time by doing so. When we got a little bit more mature, we had attract, hire, and onboard teams planning together. And the onboard product owner came in and said, hey, I'm going to deliver a welcome kit, and here's my plan. So luckily, within the meeting, we had compliance, comp, HRIT, and also PMO. And we were all able to ask him immediately a couple of questions. Hey, did you ensure that it was pretty clear that it's not going to be taxable? The PMO, I'm like, hey, do you even have money for this? What's going on? And our HRIS or HRIT were able to just quickly say, hey, are you going to be able to do it within your system? We use Workday, or is it something that's going to require an integration, so that we put it on our roadmap? And so as you can see here, if this was a project, we would have gone on our project on the side. Some of these people may or may not been in the room. And then the product owner may have been ready to go live and then go back and have to talk to different people that were already in different meetings, talking to other people about different projects. In here, this was one component of many. So everybody can just ask the questions right there and then. And if there's work that needs to be done as a dependency, we can put it in our roadmap, so that if there's not enough capacity, something else comes out. Because in order to deliver that welcome kit, we need all of these components. And if it's a priority, other little smaller things need to come out, or other things get moved to the next quarter. So that was a really big win for us. So in the end, what was the biggest win? So for me, with my PMO hat, a couple of things, or 3 things specifically. One, I used to literally track my projects by Excel. And with the 13 leaders I was supporting, by the time I finished talking to the last one, so it was really, really hard. Instead, when we moved to Jira, we made other people accountable for putting in their work. And I was not physically doing this. I was just monitoring and doing more governance to ensure that everybody and the program managers or the team supporting, from my team supporting each of the products, ensure that this was tracked and organized accordingly. So not only this give us, it's much more scalable, but for business continuity and traceability, it's a much better thing to do, because I could leave today. I hope not, but if I left today, anybody else knows how to use Jira can just go and look at the information and nothing happens. It's right there. And then we have accountability and visibility and insights that we didn't have before. At the portfolio level, I only knew kind of the milestones that we were doing with each of the projects. Here, because you start breaking down the work into little components, I can actually see at the task level what some of the people are doing and start measuring our productivity and other things. As I say here in the middle, I was only be able to say, hey, we have these projects and by quarter. And now I understood that at the more tactical level, and I could start seeing things like, hey, why do we have 50% of our projects in Q4 when that's also when we're doing compensation? And by breaking things into quarter deliveries and chunking it down incrementally, we were able to balance out things a little bit better, and I could see how we were doing. And at the end, the result was also very exciting because I went from 73 projects, and at one point, I think we had 114, which is crazy, to 4 big strategic projects, like big bang projects that need a traditional project manager, and the rest was just put into the roadmaps of the different products. And it's a much more efficient way to prioritize at the team level. And our leaders can now just come to us and say, here's the outcomes that we want you to see. You help us with the how. Then before, they would come to us, but here's a list of projects to deliver. One of the biggest things that I'm proud of for this team, though, is that when we started doing that and we can actually see habits of how we work, we realized that we doubled our speed to delivery. So for example, if before I was able to deliver like 4 or 5 features, or that's like chunks of work that we do in a quarter, we were able to do double now because we actually reduced the number of items that we had on our list, and we were able to focus. So actually we were much faster to deliver. So that was a big win for us. As we keep going forward, I really hope that we can start measuring things a little bit better and start including things like how much capacity do I leave for things that are more operational. So for example, it's one thing to enhance your process, or you're going to change something in Workday to make a process better. So that's going to take me a quarter to make those changes versus if someone's coming in and this component of Workday is broken, you got to fix it immediately. How do we manage the time and capacity for people to know what to enhance versus what to BAU? Because it's all the same people doing the work at the end of the day. So how do we just manage the stuff that's enabling those products and enabling that value to be given to the associate? So yeah, to sum it up, let me just show you what worked and what didn't. Don't be me, don't be Big Bang and not learn from Agile and start small and incrementally. And keep going. It took me 6 years to convince people until finally they gave up and they're like, okay, fine, go hire somebody. And what I did actually, I hired, as my team moved on to other roles that were project managers, I hired people that had 0 HR experience on purpose, but that were from different areas of my business. So they would understand how it was to consume HR products, and they had Agile background. So they helped me a lot with that change incrementally. Do not follow strictly a type of Agile, and that's my point of view. Other people disagree with me, but to me, what works always best is just to take some of the concepts, adapt them, and then take the heat when people tell you that you're not Agile. It's true, but we're doing a much better job and it's working for us. And then do not use the Agile words. I started with, let's educate everybody with what's a feature and a story, and we're going to be great, and we're going to sound so cool. And at the end, people were just confused, and we were missing the forest for the trees. We were really focused on what Agile is versus doing the work. So I recommend that you humanize it or just call it what it is as much as possible. So it worked. Speaking that POC with the skills to the future, as I mentioned, our product owner was phenomenal. If you pick one person that's willing to do it, people over process over technology, for me, pick the right people, pick the right team. And once the other people started to see that it was working, the other product owners immediately wanted to get on the bandwagon. Pick a couple of practices and start from there. Incrementally get better. Slow and steady wins the race. Go slow to go fast. And then, as I said, simplify the technology instead of PA planning and then sync or what have you. It's a planning meeting, design meeting. Whatever works in your context, that's what I highly recommend that you do. And so, yeah, that's it. That's where we are in our journey right now. We have a lot of room to grow, but it's really been transformative. And now that AI is coming really fast, because we already have these teams formed and we already have these planning sessions, it doesn't matter what changes. We already have the infrastructure. As things come in, we can very quickly put things out of the planning for the quarter and put it in the backlog for the next quarter and prioritize ongoingly. Our next battle will be, how do we work with finance to fund something at the product level versus a yearly project or area? So we'll stay tuned for more. So if you have any advice for me later, connect with me on LinkedIn and we can keep going forward together. But for now, that's all I have. And I'll open it up for I guess, back to you, Nick, to see if there's any questions from the room.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, we have a bunch of questions. Here's one. How can we ensure that human strategies work in harmony with technological advancements?
So, to me, technology is never the product. Technology is always the enabler. So the more we have this technology, the more we have to look and think of the human. It all starts with what is the human experience that we need? What is the work environment that we want to create? And based off of that, then we ask how technology can help us enable that. I see a lot of people thinking that digital and technology are the same thing. So we start with what can the technology do, and then put that to our employees instead of what does my employee need, or what does my employee need, and how does the human then help, and is human in the loop, and then let's look at what the technology can or cannot do, because it may be a super amazing shiny object and a super amazing thing, but it's not helping the human be better and do better or in service of your strategy. It's just not something that I recommend we keep doing. And I hope that I answered that question correctly. But it's tricky. It's tricky because as the technology gets better, especially with AI, you're like, well, what's going on? What are they going to do versus us? But human always first. For the human, by the human, to the human. So
Great. Here's another question. How can HR teams start implementing these strategies without overwhelming their current processes?
fantastic question. We're overwhelmed. We're overburdened. It's awful. So what I recommend is take a project that you already were going to do and just test that. So for us, the skills for the future was going to be a project anyway. So we're just, okay, instead of doing that, let's start in this way. And we started with the minimum number of people that we needed in the room. And we started with quarterly, and we started with, okay, for this quarter, all we need to do is figure out what is the scope and what are the three things that we want to deliver. So for us was a marketplace, gigs, so that you can sign up to do temporary jobs, and then so that if you wanted to apply for a job, you could recommend another one based on your skills, things like that. So we were already doing that, and we simply hired a coach to help us do this a little bit differently. Instead of in meetings that were dispersed and I had to put on their calendar, we just scheduled these meetings that were recurring, and we just started doing that. So we actually we made it easier for the work that we already had to do. But it's one that you're going to know your context best and see what works or not. And also, this may not work for you. So I would just start with something like that, try it 1 or 2 times, and maybe what you're doing already works best. So it's all a hypothesis, and you just go from there. Pick a product owner that's willing and that's going to be present, because that for us was the most important thing, the human.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question. What steps can HR teams take to become more agile and responsive to changing workforce dynamics?
I think the number one thing for me, regardless of what methodology you use, is that voice of the customer. Understanding what they need, understanding how people work. I often still see that we give HR to the business without understanding how the business works. So if you understand your business and you understand what they need, and you're really realigned with what they're trying to deliver, and you aligned to that, you're going to know very quickly, and you put your ego aside. Your ego needs to go to the side for a second. And I'm talking about me, because I'm like, my project's amazing, but it didn't work. So what do they actually need? What are they actually using? And get really critical at observing what they value and give that feedback, and then start from there. And just incremental delivery. Do the minimum. I don't know, we're perfectionists in HR. We want to people please. I'm not sure. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be valuable, and it has to be good. And then involve your associates to plan with you. And if you involve them in the design and planning session, you'll be amazed how engaged they are. And you don't even need to do change management, because they're actually selling these ideas for and with you. But mainly be willing to take off things. We do too much. Take things that don't add value. Hyper focus on the things that are going to be in service of your business and that are helping your associate or your employee deliver on their day-to-day job that's already stressful.
Thank you, Mercedes, for that wonderful keynote. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today for this session and all sessions. This session, along with all of today's content, is available or will be available following the event. And for those of you who earned points today throughout today's event, an Argyle team member will be following up with the winners in the next couple of weeks. This officially does conclude the Argyle HR Leadership Forum, Next Gen Innovation for HR Leaders. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. We look forward to seeing you at our next Argyle Digital Human Resources event, which will be our HR Leadership Forum, Workplace Compliance Tools, Processes, and Technology on April 17th, 2025. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.